Sampling. Sampling is a topic that is often overlooked when assessing the accuracy and reliability of a survey project and its results, because many people don't really understand what it means. Even survey researchers are sometimes confused. But without a strong sampling plan, your survey results will likely be biased. Biased to the point that the results could mislead people, they could be interpreted incorrectly, or they could just be plain wrong. In other words, you run the risk of conducting bad research. What is sampling and why does it matter? In general terms, the idea behind sampling is simple. It's the process of taking samples of something for analysis. You might try a sample of a new product at Costco to decide if you want to purchase the whole item. Or when you go to the doctor, she might draw a blood sample to test for an illness. Similarly, marketers often survey a small group of people in order to understand consumer attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. There are over 325 million people in the United States, and talking to each one of them isn't practical or even desirable. But it is possible to understand the behavior of a very large group without talking to each person individually. We do this through sampling. Probability sampling versus non-probability sampling. Most of the time, we expect that survey results will be representative of a larger population. This is more likely to be true if the researchers use a probability sampling technique, such as random sampling. Probability sampling means that each element in the population of study has an equal chance of being included in the sample. But this is harder to achieve than you might think, and in marketing research, probability sampling isn't always done. Probability sampling is often the preferred method because it reduces potential biases in selection procedures. There are 4 types of probability sampling techniques that are common in marketing research: simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, and cluster sampling. The most well-known form of probability sampling is simple random sampling. In this context, the word random does not mean unplanned or unscientific. Instead, random sampling is the very scientific process of eliminating bias from the selection process. But probability sampling is time-consuming and can be expensive. For these reasons, marketing researchers often choose non-probability sampling techniques. There are 4 types of non-probability sampling techniques that are common in marketing research: convenience sampling, judgment sampling, quota sampling, and snowball sampling. These non-probability sampling techniques are often cheaper and faster to use than probability sampling, but the data they produce have limitations. Data derived from non-probability sampling are not generalizable to the broader population. In fact, in marketing research, much of the research we are exposed to is not representative of larger populations. Instead, it's based on convenience samples. Convenience samples are non-probability samples. Non-probability samples can be very useful. For example, in exploratory research, where the researchers are looking for new insights. But it's important to know the limitations of convenience samples and other non-probability sampling techniques. The results from convenience samples generally cannot be used to generalize or describe a larger population. Random sampling versus haphazard or convenience sampling. People often confuse convenience sampling with random sampling, and this is a problem because convenience samples are not representative of a larger population. Let's imagine I work for a large auto manufacturer, and I want to forecast demand for new cars in the United States within the next 6 months. I could ask people in my neighborhood if they plan to buy a new car in the next 6 months. The results from such a survey, however, could not be generalized to represent the car purchasing intentions of all U.S. consumers. Why not? Well, what if I live in a low-income neighborhood? Then the results from my neighborhood wouldn't reflect purchase intentions of people living in more affluent neighborhoods. People in those wealthier neighborhoods might be more likely to purchase a new car in the next 6 months. Or what if I live in a big city where most people use public transportation? Again, there would be bias in my results because the results wouldn't reflect rural or suburban consumers, who might be more inclined to use and purchase a car than people in metropolitan areas. In this scenario, I might use a convenience sampling approach because it's convenient and easy to talk to my neighbors, hence the name. I might even walk around the neighborhood and randomly ask people if they plan to purchase a car in the next 6 months. But this would still not be a random sample of U.S. consumers. This would not be a random sampling technique because not everyone in the United States has an equal chance of being selected to participate. Only the people in my neighborhood would be selected, making this a convenient sample and not representative of the larger U.S. population. Random sampling, not so random after all. A lot of people mistakenly assume that if you put a survey on your website or on social media, that people will randomly take it, so this must be a random sample. But this couldn't be more wrong. This kind of haphazard approach is actually called haphazard sampling or convenience sampling, and typically results in selection bias and unrepresentative samples. Now again, in marketing research, we use convenience samples a lot, and they can provide value to the firm, but only if we understand the limitations of this kind of non-probability sampling, and don't make the mistake of overstating the findings. Random sampling requires that each element in the population of interest must have an equal chance of being included in the sample. So if I want to know how students at OSU feel about an increase in tuition, I can't just put a survey on the OSU Facebook page and expect to get a representative sample. There are a lot of students who never go to the OSU Facebook page and would never see it. Since Facebook skews to a slightly older audience than other social media platforms, and since this older population might have more financial resources, they may be less price sensitive to tuition increases than younger students, and the survey results would be skewed. Again, the results from this type of convenience sample are not representative of the entire OSU population.